Non-stop Vikings talk. It's Purple Daily on Score North and ScoreNorth.com.
We like that.
You like that?
I just said that we liked it.
You like that?
Yeah. Kirk Cousins talked yesterday about his future, about his contract situation. And so this is one of two Purple Daily episodes we're hitting you with here today. Well, Purple Daily on draft, too. You got to find that, where Declan, Miles, and Tyler talked about the national championship game last night, Michael Penix, J.J. McCarthy. So inject that one in your veins. But we come to you here, presented by Quick Trip, with just a little bonus episode about Kirk Cousins' quotes from his exit interview session. And then the meatier, longer episode is going to be our first of a few different stabs at doing the offseason for the Vikings. So cap space, touch on some free agency, and a mock draft simulation. So we're pretty loaded here on this Tuesday. A shout out to our friends at Ballard's Resort, by the way. So if you're looking for a great fishing getaway this summer, Ballard's Resort on Lake of the Woods is a place you should strongly consider. Situated on the south shore of Lake of the Woods, right where the Rainy River flows into this massive lake. I know Judd's not much of an outdoors person, but man, you can find your peace. You can be drinking a beer
beautiful.
On a dock, man.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's also Lake of the Woods is the walleye capital of the world. And with the fleet of Ballard's fishing charters, you can anticipate a professional angling experience. You can be guided and captained by a U.S. Coast Guard licensed guide. Book your dates before they fill up for this summer. Go to ballardsresort.com. That's ballardsresort.com. Sure, some Vikings players are booking some offseason plans earlier than they anticipated, including Kirk Cousins. Here is what he said yesterday. And there's other stuff too, but this is kind of he was asked, hey, would you take a hometown discount? And he said, another really good question, one I've thought about pretty much my whole 12 years is that question. I do think it's important to be aware of. I think God has blessed me financially beyond my wildest dreams. So at this stage in my career, the dollars are really not what it's about. I had a coach who I was with, who was a younger coach at the time. This was back 8-9 years ago. McVay?
I think McVay. I'm guessing McVay.
KOC? Shanahan?
I think he would have told us if it was KOC, right? I think he would have, because that's what I thought at first. I thought, oh my God, it's Kevin O'Connell.
Yeah. He said, I had a coach tell me back 8-9 years ago before my first franchise tag, and we were talking about the situation. He made a great comment. He said, Kirk, it's not about the dollars. It's about what the dollars represent. I thought that was an interesting comment that he made. There'll always be some of that, but at today's point, structure is probably more important. What did you make of these comments?
Oh, I made a lot of these comments. First of all, shout out to our friend Ross Brendel in doing the Before I Die podcast with Ross and Jesse Pierce yesterday. We talked briefly about these comments because they had just come out, and Ross pointed out that this is a spin on actually a quote from Moneyball that Jonah Hill's character said to Billy Beane about going to the Red Sox at the time. Not the exact same phrasing.
Was he
idea.
Quoting Jonah Hill?
Yeah, he was quoting the Jonah Hill character when he's talking to Billy Beane about going to the potential of Beane at the time going to the Red Sox. And it was like very much a spin on this exact same phrase.
Interesting.
So
that's interesting too, because I took it from the movie quote of Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight and Batman when Joker is literally burning all of this money on this boat. And his quote is, it's not about the money. It's about sending a message. Now that's a little bit more black and white than what the Joker was referring
Kirk
to.
ain't burning money. I can tell you that much.
Burning the money. But
Yeah.
that's funny that both Ross and I's brain went to movie quotes because that was the exact same. That was a similar thing that I was on as well.
So I took this to mean that Kirk Cousins is talking about, and I mean, you know what? In this case, I don't blame him one bit, but I think he's talking about the fact that clearly when he signed here in 2018, it was about the money. It was about the guaranteed. And it was partially because Kirk has and will forever have to a certain degree, probably less now, a chip on his shoulder about being a 4th round draft pick. Like it was
Tom Brady did for 20 years, right?
And I don't blame him one bit. But and the team that took him in the 4th round took Robert Griffin III, in what, the top 3 of that draft?
So I actually think I don't think he has a chip on his shoulder as a 4th round pick. I think he kind of knew like he wasn't recruited to a Power 5 school until like after his senior year in high school. He had to work his way through like 7 layers of other players at Michigan State. I think the chip on the shoulder is the franchise tag stuff. And the fact that like I know there's not that many quarterbacks who've been franchise tagged, but have you ever heard a player just in casual conversation refer to, like, just listen to this quote. This is back 8-9 years ago before my first franchise tag. He kind of like, we all have like timestamps for, moments in our life, right? Oh, it's before my first marriage, before my first, like, he is timestamping a moment in his life, a very significant moment, as the first time he was disrespected by a team, right? My first franchise tag.
Which is
I think that sticks in his craw.
And so in this case, I think when he talks about the structure, though, I think he is talking about the contract, not just as a bottom line. I do think that the cash is important and will always be, but I think he's talking about the structure of the term. I think he's talking, I think there's no question the Cousins camp has an idea in mind, as they often have, about what they want. And this time, yes, the money's important, but what's important too is the guarantees, how many years. And this is the question, because we don't know, and he's not going to say yet. But what do you want as far as, do you want 3 years? Because if you want 3 years at your age, that's a lot. Do you want 2 years fully get guaranteed, which is still a very big investment? Do you want a year guaranteed and then the next year not, which, I think is much more palatable? So I think what he's talking about here is more of the, and not just the finances, those are important, but more importantly to him at his age, I think it's the structure of the contract and the term of said contract.
And once you get to this age too, Drew Brees, even Tom Brady, although it's hard to use Tom Brady as I had some, we got in trouble yesterday on Twitter for bravo to Declan for grabbing some clips from Purple Daily's spirited quarterback discussion, and those are, my timeline is still just ablaze with people debating. But once you get to a certain age, you're not gonna get like 3, 4, 5 year contracts anymore. So I think he understands that. Even like Tom Brady was kind of like, oh, let's do like 2 years with Tampa, right? Or Drew Brees was like he became a free agent, then did like a 2-year kind of $40 or $50 million deal with the Saints. You get to this age. But I think the question is, when he says structure, that you nailed it. That means guaranteed years. I want to know where my family, I want to know where I'm going to play for. I think, this is how I interpret this. When he says structure is more important, I think he wants to know where he's going to be for the next 2 years. Because like anyone can just sign a 1-year deal. He wouldn't be talking about structure on a 1-year deal. Structure means more than 1 year. So and I don't blame him. If I'm him and my family loves it here and I love it here, and I love Kevin O'Connell and I love throwing the ball to Justin Jefferson, hell, we're both making each other better, then I want more than one guaranteed season. And this is where the Vikings have to figure out, where are they headed? How much can they, in their minds, continue to go down the path of, because even if he takes a discount, it's still going to be like 12 to 15% of the team's salary cap. And that doesn't include the void year accounting money that they still have to spread out over the next few years. I mean, it's going to be like, there's really no way to make it a true discount. You're going to have a 36-year-old Kirk Cousins coming off an Achilles tendon injury, even if he takes a little bit less than maybe Atlanta would give him. And it's going to eat up a huge percentage of your cap. It just is. Can you continue to build a car around that over the next 2 or 3 years with him making that high of a percentage of, like, it all goes back to the same sort of conversations, but that's what he wants. And then it's not about the dollars, it's about what the dollars represent. I told you guys this with Doogie on our Scoop episode. When you say it's not about the dollars, but what the dollars represent, it's about the dollars. You can't say it's not about the dollars, it's what the dollars represent. Yeah. Well, then, okay, it's not about the dollars in your life anymore because you've made $250 million playing football. That's what he's saying. He's saying I don't need the money, but I want the respect of being paid somewhere in the neighborhood of where my performance ranks among other quarterbacks. So you can't say it's not about whether it's about you're not living check to check if you're Cousins, but your ego is still invested and your pride is still invested in wanting to make as much money as the top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL.
And that's the thing. Yeah. And look, Kirk Cousins in 2018 became the first ever National Football League player ever to have his full contract guaranteed. Okay. Like you don't do that. And then like, hey, you know what? I'll just take a couple of bucks for this year. It's not going to work that way. And that's why I think though, that one, if these two sides decide to part ways, I don't think it needs to be acrimonious. I don't think there needs to be a problem here. Both sides want something. And if it works, fine. But if it doesn't, fine too. Like he's had a great run here. He's had chances.
He's had a run here.
Yeah. But for him, he's had a great run. For the
Personally,
Vikings,
professionally, life-wise, he's had a great run. Sure.
He's had a great run. He got featured in quarterback. Now we all know that he's lovable and he's far more likable than a lot of guys out there who play his position. I think he's had a great run here. I think the Vikings have had a decent run here. I mean, it's been disappointing, but it hasn't been an abject failure unless your goal is to win a Super Bowl, in which case it has. But the important thing here is, and I will continue to say this, and we touched on this with Doogie. You know, I think the mistake is in assuming everyone in TCO Performance Center at this point has the same view. I'm sure they're not on the same page. I think O'Connell loves the certainty of Kirk, and I think he's gotten a lot out of Kirk. And I think if Kirk is back at the right price, Kevin O'Connell thinks he can prosper. But the reality is, if you run this team, if you're the Wilfs, if you're Kwesi, I think most importantly, you're looking at a laundry list that goes way above your quarterback. You're looking at a laundry list of needs, which is why I think that the only real thing that they can do here, the smartest move, is to come to an agreement that, hey, let's kick the can, let's kick it down the road on the date that we would have to have you signed by, or else all the dead cap comes back on, which is the start of the league year. So the Vikings aren't going to sign him right now. The Vikings aren't going to sign Kirk Cousins after the start of the league year, because they'll be paying his salary cap hit and the dead cap hit.
Can we just let's pause just to, because this is like really confusing in the weed stuff, that let's just clarify for the audience, because you've reported on this, you've done some digging on this. The league year starts like the second week in March.
Right.
When the league year starts, if the Vikings don't have a new contract in place with Kirk Cousins, then the Vikings are on the hook for a $28 million cap hit in 2024. Regardless of whether Kirk Cousins, like that number hits the books for 2024.
Yep,
right?
And it sticks. Okay. And it sticks. So what the Vikings can do, though, and what Kirk should be, this actually benefits Kirk. What the Vikings should do, as Declan said a year ago, was done with Dalvin Tomlinson's contract, is you can move that deadline from the start of the league year into, let's say, April. Now he's going to be signed before then, so it's not a problem there, but that allows him to explore the market, and the Vikings can bid if they so desire. I think that is easily the best thing. And if teams are like, you know what, Kirk, you're coming off an injury, you're going to be 36. No, thank you. The Vikings might very well step up and say, well, we will pay you. We love you.
Yeah, but then he's such a huge chunk of what you're trying to do one way or the other, because you're also trying to figure out Danielle Hunter, whether you're going to try to bring him back, and then whether those guys are back or not. Other free agents you're trying to keep contact with. It kind of felt like last year free agency got away from the Vikings a little bit, where they're trying to figure out the Kirk thing. They're also trying to figure out the Danielle thing, and they're pushing that down the road. They're trying to figure out Dalvin Cook and Adam Thielen and Eric Kendricks and all these guys. And, you know, because they're trying to sift through all their in-house baggage, did they not get a jump start on a key defensive tackle or somebody that they, you know what I'm saying? That's like when you drag out your in-house baggage, you miss out on focusing on external free agents.
But this is the quarterback spot. I would far prefer to get this right. And the one nice thing in this case is if Kirk hits the market and day one, like I think that this would go fast. So if Kirk hits the market in day 1 or 2, the Falcons come along and say, 4 years, dude, let's go, guaranteed. He's gone. Now you know exactly what you have to do in the draft. So, and I don't think the Vikings, besides Danielle internally, I don't expect the Vikings to be huge players in the free agent market as far as guys coming into the market from different teams. So again, I think the most important thing here is to set your future path. And this is part of that step, because the worst thing that you could do is rush into a Cousins contract that you really don't like, but it's like, oh my God, we got to sign him. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. There's other bridge guys out there too. I mean, like, again, I'm going to preface this by saying the person I'm about to name is
Declan's
not as
gonna pull
good
this.
as Kirk Cousins right now. Do not put this on social
Lop
media.
that off right there. Okay, take that first part, Dex.
1455.
Actually,
got it.
Lop that off.
If Kirk decides to sign with the Falcons because he can't find an agreement with the Vikings,
Yep.
there are professional quarterbacks, bridge quarterbacks you could bring in that are better than Nick Mullins, like a Ryan Tannehill, for instance, who, according to Pro Football Focus, is projected to make $5 to $8, maybe $10 million a year, and draft your quarterback. But you'd want to know pretty quickly, okay, Kirk's gone. Do we need someone other than Nick Mullins? Yes, I think, for a bridge quarterback. But yeah, this all has to play out in the next couple months, which is what makes this show and this time of year so much fun once the season's over.
So excited.
So Miles threw out this idea today on Purple Daily on Draft, and this is if the Vikings have decided before the league year started that they are going to move on from Kirk Cousins. All right, so they are going to enter quarterback uncertainty, or I guess it's not quarterback uncertainty. Let me rephrase that. Life without Kirk Cousins. Better way to say that. Would they, instead of making the trade to move up on draft day, make that trade early in the offseason so they can now game plan?
Panthers
on
did it.
On March 10th, they have forfeited 3 first-round picks to move all the way up. Maybe let's call it to 3 to what Judd said. I said 5, but let's call it 3 to be really safe. You really know the third quarterback, the one you want, will obviously be there at 3. Now you get to do 8 weeks of scouting, of figuring out which guy it is at the combine, vetting process, interviews, all that stuff, and that is a plan. That is a legitimate plan that the Wilfs also, I think, can be talked into to saying, hey, we're not going to go and roll the dice and roulette it on draft day to figure this out. We're going to know this for 6 weeks, who we want. We're going to do all of our vetting process and go from there.
As Declan laid that out, I just thought of something. Let's say you do it what Declan and Miles are saying, and you use Judd's. Judd used we used the draft trade chart to move up to 3, just having fun yesterday. Let's say you move up to 3, knowing that, hey, there's a couple players. I mean, if Drake May, we love him. Jaden Daniels,
Right.
Marvin Harrison Jr. Let's say the first pick is Caleb Williams and the second pick is Drake May, and you've traded up to number 3. And that's interesting. We already have Jordan Addison here. He's fantastic. We could draft Marvin Harrison Jr. and trade Justin Jefferson for 2 first-round picks and some other things, and not pay him $35 million.
You cannot blow an episode, the juicy one of the
we'll do it.
on
We'll
just
do it.
some random thought. I should have gotten this in my notes. This is a whole show. As Declan always says, be careful.
Speculation.
God, I have
Declan's
thoughts
like,
on
what
this.
the hell are you doing?
I have thoughts on that. Not because what Phil just did there. I have thoughts on that exact idea. And if we want, I'll withhold them because we also talked about that exact scenario on Purple Daily.
I feel like we have a list.
That's
We
awesome.
literally have an email thread
my
and a list
God.
of like 20 different speculative off-season discussions. I'm gonna add.
We've
this
got a
one to the
Jefferson
thing.
trade discussion, but this sort of ups the ante.
Hold on,
Like,
would
because
you
this
trade
replaces
up to number
replaces somebody.
We're doubling down on an
and
award.
Wow.
Marvin Harrison Jr.
Wow.
Okay. One other thing here. I want to read you from one of the leaders of that locker room his thoughts on Kirk Cousins here. A shout out first, Judd, to our friends at Livia who are helping people change their lives and get in the best shape of their lives here for the start of the new year.
Yep, exactly right. Like Sports Dad a couple of years ago, 40 pounds off. And here's the best part. My friends at Livia Weight Control Centers are going to help you keep the weight off, and they're going to do it with a deal for the new year. Get this, your first 3 months are free. That's right. You're going to drop those pounds. You're going to feel great. It's going to be springtime. Now you're fitting into all those clothes. You're feeling fantastic. And first 3 months are free. Also, they're now offering breakthrough weight loss medication options as well. This is the place to go. They're going to help you keep that weight off. 855-GO-LIVEA, Livia.com, inside or outside the state, because the whole program can be done virtually. In fact, we've had folks from Tennessee, New York, PD faithful have found out exactly how effective the program can be. So you should too now. Livia, LIVEA.com.
Amen. Okay, Brian O'Neill was asked, "Hey, do you want Kirky Boy to come back?" And he was like, "No, I hate that guy." No, he said the opposite. He said everything about how Kirk carries himself. He came in. He was a 4th-round pick. He was the number 2 overall pick in the same draft. He has the number 2 overall pick in the same draft class on the same team, RG3. He wasn't the first overall pick. He's not 6'8". He doesn't run a 4.2. But he maximizes 100% of everything he's given. And that story is relatable for a lot of guys. I think regardless of what everyone believes or what their purpose or moral compass is or how they go about their life or philosophy, I think everyone can look at Kirk and say whatever his is, he lives that fully every day. He's more true to himself than most people I've ever met. He's just true to himself in his preparation, his beliefs, and he's a baller. He's really, really good. And I would just love for an opportunity to play with him again. And that's one of the leaders of the locker room. So I think if you were to do a referendum in that Vikings locker room without any other context, like, hey, do you want Kirk back? I'm pretty sure 100% return would be, yes, we want Kirk back.
Yes, I agree completely. And look, players are going to look at Kirk. I mean, that's why it's dangerous to ever have a coach in charge of personnel moves, because I feel like from the coach on down, right? So coach and players, they are going to look at the fact that Kirk is a good player. I think he can definitely, we've seen this lead. We didn't see that a while back, but we've seen that now. And they feel that Kirk is the safe guy because what the players will say is, look at what we just went through. We went from Dobbs to Mullins to Hall. Kirk is stability. But that's where, once you get to Kwesi and the front office, that's where they have to say, okay, that's true. But what gives us the best chance to win a championship? Like, does safety, because if you're a player, you're not thinking about contracts. You're not thinking about, you're thinking, good for Kirk, he got his, right?
Correct. Yep.
Like, you're not building a roster. And again, I think the Kirk thing, and there are some who aren't going to like this at all, or they don't want to pivot to it. But I think the Kirk thing also now has a lot to do with not, do you like Kirk or not? It's age. It's where you're at as a franchise. Like it's the nature of this draft being very quarterback centric, right? If I can articulate this well, this is no longer a referendum on Kirk. This is a referendum on where this franchise stands right now.
Yeah.
And that's why I think that this conversation to me should not be this hot button, you hate Kirk, you love Kirk. This should be I know, but this should be a conversation on what's really best for the long-term future of the Vikings and the quest of not trying to be good. Hey, can we be good? Or not trying to be safe. We're so afraid of not being safe that we're never great. That the Vikings are never great.
Yep. We can, we talk about risk, right? We mentioned this with Doogie on that Scoop episode too. Doogie was in the locker room yesterday, so there's all sorts of great nuggets and sort of anecdotes from players. But, we talk about the risk of moving on from what you have right now into this unknown, but we don't talk about the risk of not doing it. The risk of, okay, you bring back a 36-year-old Achilles, let's say we're talking about structure that Kirk likes, 2 years guaranteed. You could still draft a quarterback. I think it might be a little less light. I think you'd probably play a little safer then. If you signed him to a 2-year guaranteed deal, I don't think you're then trading up for Jaden Daniels.
No.
Maybe you take McCarthy in the second round or something. You're kind of hedging, right? But then 2-year contract, Kirk Cousins. We know it's safe, it's secure. We know what we're getting possibly, by the way. Achilles, 36 years old, you don't really know.
Sure.
Well, isn't there a risk in passing on a guy that could be Josh Allen? That could be Patrick Mahomes, that could be Justin Herbert. There's tons of risk in that too. We only think about the risk in like the action that you take as opposed to the action that you don't take. And that has to be factored in.
Correct. And so to sort of crystallize this, I've got a story from this year that does not involve any mention of Kirk, but it's one of the things that bothered me the most. And in retrospect, I think bites you in the ass if it's true. And I don't have a reason to believe it's not true. Do you guys remember around the deadline when I think Kwesi did a presser after the deadline, after the trade deadline passed, and he'd gotten Dobbs in that trade, and he said he was asked something along the lines of, "Did you come close to or consider trading Danielle Hunter?" And he said, players came to me and said, "Give us a chance to win, give us a chance." Now, on the surface, that sounds great. Oh, you listen to the players. That's fantastic. It's the worst thing you can possibly do. Now, keeping Hunter, if it's your decision, okay, then you're going to take the hit for it or not. It turns out to be great. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But think about that for a second. If that locker room was allowed to decide, or let's say in the case of Hunter, they were allowed to decide, Danielle Hunter could have potentially gotten you a conditional first-round pick and a second-round pick.
For sure.
Danielle Hunter could have put you in the catbird seat of this draft far more. And he had 16 and a half sacks, and he is phenomenal. But there's a very good chance he is going to walk away from your team as a free agent, and you're going to get nothing back, and you just won 7 games.
Yeah, if Danielle walks and you wind up, you get like no, you wouldn't get a comp pick for him, right? Or no, let's look on that. You would in 2025. You might get like a
but not this
third
year.
round pick.
Correct.
Boy,
Kwesi
that would be the worst case.
so I found that transcript too of exactly someone asked, how do you characterize the interest you got, especially on Danielle Hunter? And Kwesi said, I try to keep my calls with other teams confidential, but look, he's a talented pass rusher. He's leading the league in sacks. There's going to be phone calls, whether it's just parts of conversations or more direct. But ultimately, we decided what we decided, and we were going to move forward. And I'll tag team this with someone asked, so you want Kirk Cousins back next year? They asked him that like in the next follow-up question. And Kwesi said, I mean, Kirk played great. I think my want for Kirk to come back isn't just a me thing. You know, it's a negotiation. You come together at the table and you try to see if everything works together, and we'll have dialogue when that time occurs.
He has never, when given many chances, he has never flat out said, oh, we want him back. Like, it's always about, we want him, but it's a negotiation, this, that, the other. So
It's not a champagne problem.
as
It's
he
a
characterized
problem.
it. Yeah. So, all right, there's so much more meat on that bone, but we've got our first stab on our next episode here of crafting the Vikings offseason. And we'll see where it goes. We're all going to put our heads together as if we are running that front office, which would be a horrible mistake if the Vikings ever let that take place. So thank you for hanging out with us here on this bonus episode, Purple Daily, presented by Quick Trip. We just want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die.